Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I have another excellent guest on the show today. I hate to say the word former, but former Rutgers athlete. And wait till you hear this young woman's background. It's not just what she accomplished as an athlete, but what she did while being an athlete in addition to. So she was on the Rutgers women varsity rowing team. While she was, as an athlete at Rutgers, she was involved with a number of other things. The Rutgers University Student Assembly, Executive Board, Elections Appeal Committee, Athletics Affairs Chair, SAC Rep. She's Student Athlete Advisory Committee for the women's rowing team rep, Student Athletes Ambassador for the R Fund, Rutgers Unified Sports Special Needs Athlete Volunteer, embrace kids, support families of children with cancer blood disorders, the women's rowing team rep, the Rutgers Economic Society member. I mean, it goes on and on. If you look at her LinkedIn page, there's like a ton of stuff on there. I can't list it all, but welcome
You
to
didn't
the
mention my
show.
internships either. So
Not yet. We're going to get into that, but welcome to the show, Rachel Maeng.
yeah, thank you so much. It's I think I said this to you before. It's like a homecoming for me.
That's
Um,
good.
just having been so involved as a student athlete, even now as a senator, but just our conversations, since during then and since then, and then all my colleagues that you've had on the show. So it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think you're like the 21st Rutgers athlete I've had on.
Yeah. No,
And it's
that's
growing.
awesome.
I have more coming on, and the more the merrier, and it just shows the breadth and strength of the athletes that
Yeah.
are comfortable telling their story about their
Mhm.
lives and what athletics has done for them. But I have a ton of questions to ask you. So before I start to, ask you a ton of them, why don't you just tell the audience just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of roll from there.
Yeah. So I am Korean Filipina. Um, I'm originally from South Korea, adopted to a family in upstate New York. I think a big part of my story is that my parents are white. I was adopted, like I said, and the community I grew up in was 89% white as well. So, I was definitely an outlier there. And I think that, along with being treated just like everyone else a little bit when I was growing up, along with, having the regular teenage and a little bit of racial issues growing up. I think all of that led to this idea that I always say, like, I have the audacity of a 30-year-old white man,
Yeah.
because I really do believe, there's not a thing that I can't do if I at least try.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that had a lot to do with my upbringing, with my parents just letting me be that, like, try and fail. And even, what I did at Rutgers and what I was able to accomplish there and what that led to, all of that I think goes back again to that audacity.
Okay. So growing up in Syracuse, what was that like?
Old. um, I always laugh now because I live in Los Angeles and every
Yeah.
day you never have to check the weather. Like, it's always nice out. But that's the sun tax that you pay for to live out here.
Yeah.
But I am so sad when it's like in the 60s here. But I think back to Syracuse, of the days of me wearing like a skirt or shorts to school when it's
Yeah.
like winter, like a shorts and or a skirt and like Uggs was the thing back then.
Yeah.
But just like how much different it is nowadays, and how I'm like older and I'm like, oh my God, my knees, my back when it's cold out. So
Yeah.
number one, cold.
Yeah.
But number two, I again lived in like a really great community, had a lot of great friends. Again, it wasn't as diverse, I think, then, and I wouldn't even say as diverse as I would have wanted, because a lot of my diversity understanding came when I went to Rutgers, and like what a shell shock that was of first
Yeah.
going to a school where I was one of two Asian students in my class, to going to Rutgers where, like, not only am I not the only person of color, but there's another, subset of being Asian, was being
Yeah.
Asian but coming directly from Korea, China, etc.,
Yeah.
to the school as a student, versus myself having grown up in only Western American culture my whole life.
Right. So how did Rutgers find you, or how did you find Rutgers?
Yeah. So back in the day, they had something called Be Recruited.
Yep.
I got really lucky that I was a coxswain for a school that was very good. We won state championships. We were always, top school in the state. And I worked under a coach, Chris Ledden, who was a like Olympic athlete. He also rowed for Syracuse, and Syracuse rowed in an adjacent boathouse on the same property to us. So world class rowing, great pedigree of coaches and such. Um, so I got lucky, I think, in that sense that I had a lot of great rowers around me. You obviously, as a coxswain, need a great team to get you recruited. But even so, like I was a self starter. I reached out to coaches. I got my tapes on YouTube, on Be Recruited, on every recruiting platform, every event, state championships, invitationals. I wanted to know what coaches were there and I wanted to introduce myself. And I got lucky along the way that I used all my official visits, all my unofficial visits. I had over 40 schools I was talking to at the time, and ended up selecting Rutgers. My major was originally biomedical engineering. They were one of the only schools that had it at the time. And then, second, we were going to be the inaugural class in 2014 into the Big
Mm,
Ten. And so those two things were really, really important to me at that
yeah.
time.
So you're your own PR firm.
Yeah.
You promoted yourself. So
Yeah.
how did you get into rowing? It's not the typical sport you find in a high school. And I would imagine that most high schools don't have rowing, but the ones that do spend a lot of time and energy in it.
Yeah. So to start off with, rowing is expensive. Like the
Yeah.
boats are tens of thousands of dollars, the oars are hundreds of dollars, and you've got multiple boats on the water at once. You've got to have a launch, which is a motorboat that the coach drives in and follows the athlete. So it's like an expensive sport.
Yeah.
Again, I went to a really good school and community public school in Syracuse that could pay for it. On top of it, Syracuse was again like we were one of the schools around Syracuse area, so they promoted and pushed it on a lot of the schools that had access to the water.
Yeah.
That's the other big proponent. You got to be near the water. And so again, like my coach, he was a great coach, and even my JV coach. Her name was Garvey at the time. She found me, I think, and number one, my family, I had an aunt who was in rowing. So she always had told me about it. And then I think they saw me and they're like, this small Asian girl is very loud and like a captain on other teams and very talkative. And you know what? Like she's the perfect size and has the best qualifications to be a coxswain because those are the common qualifications. So,
Yeah. So you show up to Rutgers
mhm,
as a freshman. What's that like? The world of recruiting today is different than it was back when you got
can
recruited,
imagine
right?
that.
And we'll talk about that in a second because you're involved with all kinds of cool stuff in your current profession now.
Mhm.
But what was it like showing up, 18-year-old young girl from upstate New York down into the city area? Like you said, diverse world. You're on a rowing team. You're in D1, Big Ten. What was there intimidation going on? Were you like excited? Were you scared? Were you confident? What was going on in your head at that time?
Yeah. Honestly, like I said before, like that audacity component, it has kept me overly confident over the years, even to this day. And so I came to the school very overconfident, very confident just in general of like my abilities. I had won state champion. I had gotten recruited by all these schools. The coaches, of course, sell you on this beautiful dream of being a captain, of, being in the best boat, having the best competition, rowing in the Big Ten, all these things. And so I was overconfident. And I think that ended up being my demise, honestly, was I was so like gung ho and ready. And I think that led to a lot of the like political turmoil, let's call it, that I had on my team at the time. There were people who genuinely believed like earn your place, number
Yeah,
one. There were coxswains obviously above me that were more senior in age, but also in skill. Like with age comes skill. And on top of it, had already worked their way through the team, understanding the way that they do things and things like that. So I
yeah,
think that was a big, big part of my freshman year was almost being put in my place of
yeah,
like, you have to earn your spot here. Number one. And then number two, socially, it was my favorite time. My roommate was a tennis player from Israel that we're still friends to this day.
okay,
And all my like hall mates were all of their student athletes and they were so welcoming and so nice. And, what was interesting was my coach, our recruiting class was 5 people. So somebody had to be the odd person out. And of course it was me. Every other freshman got paired up with another rower to live with, and I got paired with a tennis player. So naturally all my friends were on different teams, and that
yeah,
was a really really big part of my freshman year. And I think like even who I am as a person today was being able to branch out into these other sports and teams and being able to listen to people and create community and, be of service to other people. That led to me being on SAC and all these other things. But it was in direct conflict with my team. That's just not what we
Right.
did at the time. We didn't hang out with other teams. We just kind of stayed to ourselves. Our team is huge. There's like 60 girls on it. So like,
Is that
you have
many?
your own
Wow.
friends. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Um, but yeah, that I think those two things together just marked my freshman year for me.
Wow. So you how did you said you got put in your place? Was that by the other girls on the team? Was that the coach or both? Or how did you handle that?
All three. Um,
Yeah.
again, like I said, like my closest friends were on other teams and we're still friends to this day, gymnasts, volleyball
Yeah.
players, football players, etc. Um, and put in my place definitely by my freshman year there was another girl in my position, and you don't normally bring in two people in my position because there's only one per boat and there's only so many boats. So there was already competition and turmoil right out the bat. I am not a
Mhm.
person that will tear you down for my own benefit. And a lot of other people, especially in a competition sense, like that's
Yeah.
the name of the game. And so you have
Yeah.
to do that. But I am just innately not that and will not do that even to this day. And so, it started out there and then myself hanging out with all these other sports and athletes, being wanted to be involved in clubs and such, like that again was not the norm. And so that was other teammates, talking about me to coaches in captains meetings and
Yeah.
just talking about how I was not assimilating with the team at that time. Um, I ended up not even really competing much my freshman year. Number one, because we had enough of my position where I didn't need to compete quite often. But even so, like I just didn't assimilate with the team. And so that's a big part in rowing. Like it's kind of culty across like
Yeah.
any team. Even when I was in high school, we were like, we're the rowing team. Like we're all
Yeah.
good friends.
Yeah.
And so again, spoken to by my coaches at the time and even spoken to by my captains at the end of the year. And I had to make a choice. That I needed to be more a part of my team than I had originally thought.
Right. Now, but what did they see that they didn't like? Just because you have friends or other athletes and other teams, that's not allowed. It was like,
I can't really say because I was on the receiving end.
yeah,
But it was a number of things. I think, to have a team, to be so close, many other teams in college, even to this day at other schools, like if there's off campus housing, you do live together.
yeah,
You are very close. You go to practice
yeah.
together, you work out together. And then even as freshmen, like I mentioned, we were put in dorms, in dorm rooms with other rowers. I
Yeah.
wasn't. Oh,
Uh-oh.
that's not good. Mhm.
So your position on the team was a coxswain, and I would say for the layman, the
Mhm.
non-athletic listener, they might be saying like, what does that mean? Like, what does that position mean? What do you
Mhm.
do? How important is that? Can you describe what that's all about?
Yeah. So the coxswain is the person who, in a boat that has eight rowers in it, the coxswain is the ninth person. They actually sit forward facing to where the boat is going. The rowers actually sit backwards and row backwards. So the coxswain is truly like the eyes of the boat. They keep the cadences. They make small corrections in the technique and the posture of how the rowers are. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me try to figure this out. Yeah. Um, so we're setting the cadence for the boat, and we're the eyes and ears, so there's a lot of trust that's involved. Of the rowers are rowing and they can't actually see where they're going. You need to tell them how they're stacking up against the boat next to you, if they're ahead, if they're behind, how far they're behind, things like that. And so because there's so much trust involved in it, I think that's where we kind of butted heads. Like that's
Yeah.
where the issue was created, that like my team at that time, the people that were in the boat didn't trust me because I was spending so much time with other athletes and doing other things like
Yeah.
volunteering and being involved. Um, and I wasn't spending as much time with the team. So at that point, like they don't know me. I'm a freshman. So I can completely understand like how
Yeah.
it just didn't resonate well. And also I think too, just, I was doing something completely out of the norm of what other people had done for years on this team.
Yeah.
And so, I can understand how the situation happened the way it happened.
Right. So how did the second year, third year, and fourth year, what happened there? I know you mentioned before you had some injuries, and it was kind of a tough ride.
Yeah, at the time, even when I came in as a freshman, they had us working out constantly.
Yeah.
And as a coxswain, you want to be as light as possible because you're dead weight. But interestingly enough, and I can't say, in comparison to another school like Ohio State or, Wisconsin, because I didn't go there, but they had all the coxswains working out and lifting. And so I was putting on a ton of muscle. I was actually lifting quite a lot more compared to some of the rowers who were a little bit smaller just because like I'm built lower body. Um, and so with that comes more weight. And
Hmm.
number one, that was bad. But number two, from all the lifting, I actually hurt my back. And what it ended up being was they found out I had spina bifida after
Oh,
many, many x-rays and such because they could not figure out what it was at the time. And then because I had the spina bifida, my sciatic nerve was exposed, my nerve was exposed in my back. And so my muscles constantly were constricted and pinched that nerve. So I was
yeah.
in constant pain. Like I always had nerve pain. Um, Probably honestly like this after the spring semester maybe of my freshman year all the way through until 2018. I
Wow.
had it for all 4 years, and so I would compete during the season and off season because we're sitting in a boat, you're in like a little compartment, you're
Yeah.
bent up, and so if you have a sciatic nerve issue or a back issue, that's really not good to be sitting or standing for long periods of time. And that's what my whole job was. So in off season I would spend so much time at the trainer getting PT work done using like Theragun, stem cell or
Yeah.
stem technology, which is like electrocurrent. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yes.
So yeah, yeah. Being in that position on the boat, having the back problems, the leg problems, sciatica problems,
Mm-hmm.
was that diagnosed right away, or were you like 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, just in pain? They couldn't figure it out.
Just like every other athlete in college. Yeah, I was hurt for quite a while. It happened my freshman year. They really did not figure it out until maybe like my senior year. It
That's a
was
long
interesting.
time.
Yeah, I know. And what's interesting is that was such a big part of like who I was to the team was just like the injured coxswain because coxswains don't get injured often. We're
Yeah,
really just sitting there in the boat.
yeah,
Other than like working out with the team and other workouts, you don't get injured very often.
yeah.
Um, and so for me, they couldn't figure it out because on X-ray or on MRIs, obviously the spine, like everything that went on, they couldn't really see what was going on. They were always just looking at the sciatic nerve, like, okay, it's
Yeah,
inflamed, but we can fix this. So really,
yeah.
it was just a pain thing. And it wasn't until my senior year when I wasn't even competing, that I think I had been referred to a new doctor and they took a look and they said, oh, wow, like your spinal column isn't actually finished fusing in this one area. And so that's why you have like this bulging nerve and
Mm.
it's just been in constant pain because you never actually went and got it fixed. So ended up getting a couple epidurals, ended up
Oh,
getting surgery. And was bedridden for a couple weeks and that ended up fixing it. I like did not have that nerve pain. It eventually does come back. It's not like a permanent fix.
yeah.
Since I aggravated this and found this out, like I will forever always have back pain and it's just up to me to try to mitigate the pain and stay
Yeah.
fit so it doesn't happen like that as it did.
Got to keep the core tight,
Yeah.
right? That's the hardest problem
I know.
is doing all that. Well, so your athletic career, it's at that level, it's so hard.
Hmm.
It is you had to balance your team, your injury, the sport, school, all the other extracurricular stuff. How the heck did you balance all that? How did you keep your mind focused and straight where most kids will crack
Yeah.
under all that pressure?
You know, I loved my sport and I loved it so much in high school. And honestly, um, I didn't love my sport as much as I did before once I was in college. And it was the way that my team treated me and the issues that I had, and even the issues I brought upon myself, honestly.
Yeah,
I just didn't love it as much as I had. And so, at that same time that I realized like I need to spend more time with my team, I need to let them get to know me more. I need to do more work with them. I also realized like what I found passion in wasn't just rowing and wasn't actually biomedical engineering anymore. It was kind of advocacy. It was a lot of the work that I was doing with the R Fund, where I was up in the Audi Club at the time, talking to donors, talking to, different constituents of the Rutgers community, about like all the work that we had done at Rutgers and all the good
Yeah.
things. I spent some time in the recruiting lounge. I spent a lot of time volunteering. It was all these other things. And so that really spurred into me just wanting to be involved. And that led to the rest of my career, which was me changing my major into economics and business. Math was easy. Just, at that point was like, what I'm doing doesn't necessarily make sense for what I want. I didn't want to be a doctor. And I realized I wanted to start a company that had to do with media rights, specifically like representation for athletes and just
Hmm.
helping them with off the field type things. And so then I got involved in student government, RUSA. I got involved in, more volunteering. I got involved in being executive chair. I started doing all these organizations and such. And that, kind of impacted the rest of my career.
And that's where your blood started to boil for all that stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Have some
That's
fun.
where, that led to an award from the chancellor. That led to like everything I did down the road.
So do you think, and this might be a crazy question to ask you, but do you think the the uneasiness, let's say for lack of better words, you had in the athletic world, it helped you uncover what your true passion was for?
Yeah. I think, in high school, I was in like 12 clubs and organizations. Like I should
Yeah.
have known that this was not it. I was really good at science and math and engineering, and that's what I ultimately went to college for a major with. But I was in like 12 clubs and organizations. I started a first club of many, at my school in high school, did a lot of different things. And so I think that passion was always there. And then when I got to college, not gelling with my team and not spending as much time with them, spending all this time with
Yeah.
other teams and other athletes, and even like our administrators and wanting to help out and do more. I think that became more apparent in college. And
Yeah.
then having some sort of outlet other than what wasn't giving it things to me at the time, which was rowing, that just kind of sealed the deal.
Yeah. So when rowing was over, were you, I mean, I coined a phrase, or maybe I stole it. I say this every show, that athletes die twice. When their sport's over, they die, but they got to live with it. But then they
Mm-hmm.
die in real life, and it's okay because they're gone. But when your athletic career ended, how did you handle that? Were you okay with it? Were you like, I'm glad it's over, or did you miss it?
You know, I think my athletic career died over those years in college.
Yeah,
Um, I my freshman year again, like I said, I was so confident, so gung ho, um, and that was killed so quickly in that meeting that I had with the captains. Like the spirit and the confidence and everything, it was really taken away there. And
it's like they
so I think
sucked the wind out of you.
yeah, truly.
Yeah,
And so the next couple years, like I was there and like I worked really hard when I was there. I did everything I was supposed to do, but my mind and my heart were somewhere else. And so I
yeah,
think like my athletic career slowly died over those couple years. And it's too bad, but to this day, I do miss like being a coxswain, being out on the water.
yeah,
But like I think what I ended up getting out of it was so much more of just like the life that got breathed
yeah,
into me, of the adversity that I had to go through and what came out on the other end. I think
yeah,
that's really like what I look back at college as like the greatest gift that it gave me.
yeah. Can you talk about that? I love talking about adversity. So many athletes face it, and it's not just on the field either, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not just on the water, on the court, in the field. There's adversity that we all face many times in different places as an athlete, mentally,
Yeah.
that the world doesn't see. Can you talk about that? Like any type of mental challenges, things you had to overcome and deal with that helped you become who you are today.
Yeah. I think number one was that. I think that was at that time the biggest adversity I'd ever faced because, up to that point, I was always captain. I was on the most winningest team. Like,
Yeah,
I had over a 4.0 in high school. And then I got there and it was like, oh, you have to juggle school. That's much, much harder. You have to make new friends. You've got a team that you're not getting along with, coaches you're not getting along with. And that was so crushing at that time, like I said. Even going, academically, like I didn't understand why it was so difficult all those years before. Like school was so easy in high school, and I don't think I really figured that out until my junior year. Especially when I changed my major, it was like, okay, now things are clicking. I should not be in the major I was in. um but
and you didn't transfer either.
I didn't transfer.
Yeah.
I did
Whereas most
stay,
kids would have like, I'm out of here.
especially nowadays. nice.
Right?
Um, but after that, I think my next adversity was like going into the business world. I had been recruited as a senior for a couple different jobs, ended up settling to be a recruiter at Robert Half. And very quickly, I realized like I couldn't find a purpose in like what I was doing. I didn't think I was helping anyone. I didn't see, where what I was doing was benefiting the world. And so I kind of had like another crisis where I was like, I can't be here anymore because this just isn't like who I am. And even physically, like it started to show up where I just kept getting sick. And like after, the second or third time that I was sick, like recurring, I was like, you know what? It's the job because this just isn't me. So I left, went back to Rutgers, worked for Rutgers football, and then ended up at the New York Mets for my last full time role. And that was, there I thrived so much because I not necessarily like felt a purpose, but I could tell that like this was more of the area that I wanted to be in. Fast forward, ended up after the Mets, after 9 months, launching my first company, which was consulting. That in itself was, a hard choice.
Well,
And
talk
everyone,
about that. Like, what inspired you to do that, to take that risk, give up a good job, working for the Mets, making money, and now you're going to give it all up and go out on your own? Like, that
you
takes a lot
know,
of guts.
and it's funny because even then, like I was like, oh, this isn't a hard decision. Like at the Mets, I was doing sales and that's great. Like you're selling for the team, but I just didn't feel like I was benefiting the constituency group that I'd always wanted to help, which was athletes. And at that time ended up becoming influencers. I just wasn't helping. So I knew like I had to leave what I felt was comfortable to go out and do something. Ended up starting consulting that led to TikTok bringing me on to help them convert the platform from what it was pre-COVID to now through content in their Learn on TikTok program. Ended up meeting a couple creators there and starting our agency, which was talent management for influencers at the time. And crazy enough, the first year in, we're doing so well. We're about to hit 1 million in revenue. We have all these great brands like Amazon, Netflix, Kellogg's, Macy's, like great companies, NerdWallet. And we're having this event that we had put together where, we had rented a house. It's called an influencer house. And it was surrounding like a big event. And it was so much pressure and stress of myself, like being the lead on this. We obviously had other founders, but I was the lead on the event that I ended up getting a cyst in my face because there's a little pocket of like empty space here in your cheeks. I got a cyst from like my immune system being down. It ended up getting so big it pinched the nerve in my face, and so like my whole left side of my face was like
Oh my
blown up.
God.
It looked like I got kicked by an elephant. I was in constant nerve pain. Ended up eventually like going to the hospital and was like, I can't figure out what this is. And then it burst and I went into sepsis like on site at the hospital, luckily, because then they immediately knew what that was. They checked me in immediately and I stayed there for a little bit while I got surgery. Was bedridden for a couple weeks. And so the physical pain was definitely a big part of it, that I had to deal with, that I had to overcome. But the second part
Yeah.
was like realizing that I was putting in work that was not equal to the amount that other people were putting in work. And that was stressing me out. And just like the true power that stress has on your body.
Yeah.
And after I got out of the hospital, I was like 2 weeks on bed rest and still taking meetings just with my camera off. Like that was such a big change for me. All of that was like another huge moment in my career that just I think prepared me for like that next phase of my career, which was being a
Yeah.
solo founder.
It's like your body tells you to change jobs.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it definitely does. And I think
Yeah.
some people that are so like purpose driven, like I am so like if I think I'm doing the right thing, I can do it. But if I don't think I'm doing the right thing, I won't, no matter what it's going to cost. And like I think my body has showed me that many, many times.
Right. So how does your body respond? This is people are probably wondering, like when you're happy, when things are going well, when you're enjoying your career, when you don't feel this stress, how are you feeling?
Well, actually, I have OCD.
Okay.
So it's really different, I think, than other people. But if anything, it's like more heightened. When business is good and things are going well, like you're kind of on a high.
Yeah.
And like you feel like you have control. But with my OCD, I have trouble with things that I can't control. And it leads to me like needing to organize things and stuff like that. And I can see like how that was clearly apparent in my childhood and in my college times,
Yeah.
and why it was so hard for me to do things. But, when you're, having a like a moment, let's call it, with the OCD, then you're suffering with anxiety and depression. And
Yeah.
so that's like a big part of my life now is like keeping myself out of those areas by mitigating what I'm doing to better keep me out of those moments where like I don't have things in control, or where like I'm
Yeah.
letting my mind go into places that it shouldn't. That's like a
Yeah.
big part of like being an entrepreneur, and even just who I am today.
Yeah. So OCD, anxiety. Can you talk about that? There's somebody listening saying, "Oh my God, I have that too. I have that problem."
Yeah.
How do
Everybody
you?
has anxiety and depression,
Yeah.
especially athletes nowadays, people
Yeah.
nowadays. I think,
Yep.
I hate to say it because I was one of the people that was like helping promote social media.
Yeah.
Um, but just, the comparison is the thief of joy. So many people look at things and they're like, oh, I should be doing that. Why am I not doing that? And
Yeah.
it makes them anxious, or they feel like they should, have certain things, or they should make certain decisions, and it makes them depressed that they don't have them. And so
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of the world that we live in today.
Yeah.
And almost everyone I know says that they have instances of anxiety and depression. I think that's
Sure.
sad. And I think it's hard, even for myself and my partner, to mitigate those types of things when when you're in the moment of anxiety or depression. Like, it feels like you're in a pit and you
Yeah.
can't get out of it. And I think
Right.
that's one of the hardest feelings to feel, even if you have everything going for you, a family
Yeah.
that cares about you, a career that's going well. Like,
Yeah.
when you are in that hole of anxiety and depression, it's incredibly difficult to get out of.
Yeah. Any coping skills that you deal with that you use that you can recommend that help you, pull yourself out of it?
Mine's a little bit different because I actually have OCD. But I think just understanding yourself. I think even like as college athletes, even as young adults, just understanding what those triggers might be.
Yeah.
It might be when work is getting really hectic and you're not sleeping as much, you're not eating as much, you find yourself not being able to go to work out. For me, I knew that was a big one. In college, we worked out 6 days a week. After college, I worked out 3 to 5 days a week, much less. And once I found myself not working out as much, or I found myself not eating as much, or found myself doing certain things that I know that I only do when I'm starting to get off track, mental health wise, that's when you should be able to understand, okay, these are indicators and I need to do something, whether it be exercise or read, or even take mental health breaks, that you
Yeah.
need to do those things to get back on track.
Yeah. And it's sometimes you don't realize when you need to take a break until somebody
Mm-hmm.
points it out. Say, hey, look,
Yeah.
you got to go take a break,
And
take a walk.
that's why the power of community is so important.
Yeah.
As student athletes now, you do have your team, but you also have your family. You have
Yeah.
other administrators who might be looking out for you. You have other friends from back home. Even as a young adult, like your
Yeah.
coworkers, there's something to be said for like sitting and commiserating with your colleagues about the BS that you're dealing with at work or wherever you are. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
truly a big camaraderie moment. That's definitely something that led to me having like certain friend groups, was like us just complaining. I think that's such a human thing to do.
Yeah.
And that is so important to have those
Yeah.
people.
I mean, it's good to have I always say, hey, the complaint department's open now. Let's do a
Yep.
joint. But then sometimes you guys say, hey, listen, the complaint department's closed.
Yep.
We had enough complaining. Let's get going.
Yep.
And there's good and bad on both of those, right?
Yeah.
You know. So talk about your entrepreneurial drive. You're built to build. So
Yeah.
where'd that come from? Where are you at now? What's going on in your life that you're excited about? And let the world know like the successes you're having.
Yeah. That agency was like my baby. I had it for 4 years. It was everything I did, everything I cared about. And I sold in June. And so that was a big feat. Not just the sale, but like being able to say you built something that somebody else wanted and saw value in.
Now,
So
what
that was a
made you
big
sell it?
thing.
Was it what you were at that you were done with it? You wanted the next chapter in your life? Like why sell it then?
Yeah, I think, I saw a peak and a plateau kind of in this creator economy, number one. But number two, talent management is difficult. It's a lot of dealing with personalities and like, you gotta do this, you gotta
Yeah.
do that. You're kind of in the middle as an agency between the client and the brand.
Yep.
So that's always difficult. And then lastly, I think my spirit wise, like mentally, I had hit this part where I knew like it was done. Like, what I needed to accomplish there was done, and I was ready to move on to something else. In the agency, we began moving into more of the sports world. Like, we were going to Super Bowl, All Star, all these sorts of events,
You were having
holding
fun.
activations. Yeah, holding activations for them, taking on a lot of athletes or adjacent athletes. Um, And so I always knew sports was what I wanted to end up getting back to. And so that was a big part of it as well, was, recognizing meta world peace. Like I wouldn't have taken him on as a talent agency, but taking him on to do events like we are now is different. And like that's something that I do personally. And, working with, most recently just did a contract with Nike. And that being on the strategy side, that's something a little bit different than the agency. So I just
Yeah.
knew at that point it was time.
So what are you doing with Nike? What kind of things are you doing with them?
So still an open contract, still an NDA, but just more on the strategy side. As far as what I do day to day, I am a senator for Rutgers. I'm the alumni affairs senator, and I am also on the student affairs committee. I'm one of the co-chairs. I oversee all of the 500,000 plus constituency base of alumni in the Senate, which is one of the governing bodies, just like BOG, et cetera.
Yeah.
Um, I also have done fractional C-suite work, COO, Chief Operating Officer, and CMO. Just wrapped up another contract there. I also invest and I'm an advisor in a few startup companies, being one in insurance, surprisingly enough, but other ones are in the startup world and creator economy, NIL in particular, AI sponsorships.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just like different contracts and projects. Like I mentioned, working with Meta was like a standalone contract. Same thing with Nike,
Yeah.
and some other clients. So I'm kind of at this point just doing a lot of things that I'm good at and figuring out
Yeah.
like what that next thing will be.
So talk about NIL stuff. Like the world is crazy right now,
It's so
right? It's really, I mean, I'm hoping they put some guardrails somewhere, but I don't know who is in line for more trouble. The
mm,
schools, the alumni, or the athletes, or a combination of the three.
yeah.
But what do you think about what's going on? Where do you see it going? And if you could pinpoint how to correct it or fix it or put a rail on it, what would you do?
I think it's almost like as everyone says, like the cat's out the bag. I think it's going to take some time to um, kind of like level out per se. I think the way that I always explain it is that I was lucky enough to be a part of the creator economy. So I got to see the rise and fall of these brand deals and
Yeah.
valuing creators and media and activations and all these sorts of things. And so my background is in the standardization of it and like the formulas and the mathematics of it. I was the one brokering the millions of dollars of deals and such. And so I got like an early peek into it before NIL became as large as it is today. And so I think that's like a big part of how I look at the NIL economy. I think NIL in general, college sports made so much money, the Final Four, etc.
Yeah.
The value of Duke's multimedia is like 10 million per year. And so this money had to get distributed to the athletes somehow. And obviously that was going to be NIL. I
Yeah.
think it's difficult now that you're involving like the salary caps because that feels like a pay for play. But then, the NIL deals individually from brands was supposed to level the playing field, but then you've got some sort of tampering with donors, and then you've
Yeah.
got brands that are owned by donors and things like
Yeah.
that. And I think that's where it starts to get sticky. I
Yeah.
think what really threw a wrench in it though was the transfer portal. Just being
Yeah.
able to, even though you're not supposed to, offer other athletes money based on going to that school, even though it's not written like that. That's how it feels. Um,
Yeah.
and so a lot of people being able to complete these waivers to go from, an in conference transfer and things like that. I think it just made everything more crazy.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like NIL is about money, and it's the best schools will win. And the best schools are the schools with the most money and the most loyal fan bases who are willing to give that money, because the salary caps, the $20.5 million, they are almost all donor funded. And so
Yeah.
again, the schools with the biggest donors and the biggest money, like they're the ones who are going to win. So you're
Right.
going to see more and more of these power conferences and these power schools.
Right. I mean, you look at Rutgers the other day with Penn State, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was a heartbreaker. But the money, they're just not going to compete with the checkbooks of
Yeah.
these other schools.
Yeah.
And I, as a former football guy, right, is it's all about facilities. You know what I mean? You go to Penn State's facilities, Ohio State, LSU, then you come here to Rutgers. If you haven't seen anything else, Rutgers looks really good. But if
Mm-hmm.
you go to LSU and you see what's going on over there, like, why am I going to come here? And it just takes money
Yeah.
to
And I
make it
think
happen.
even to add on to that, I think it was about facilities. I think Rutgers like has the standard of everything that you need. And obviously more money is being put into, expand Livingston and other areas.
Yeah.
But Now it's about like, what can you offer me from the salary cap?
Yeah.
Sports, like football, of the 20.5 million, they're getting 10 to 15 million of that. That leaves less than $10 million for the rest of the teams. Think
Yeah.
about your money makers.
Yeah.
Men's and women's basketball, if they're each taking five, that's your 10 right there. Or they're
Yeah.
each taking 2.5, that's 5
Yeah.
million left between all the other sports,
Right.
between men's and women's teams. Um, all those sorts of things. And so now it's a money game of like, how are you using this $20.5 million to make the best rosters possible? And that's a
Right.
huge, huge part of it. Why so many third party companies are coming in now and they're saying, we have the perfect formula of athletes that are currently in the transfer portal, of the athletes you currently have, the athletes you're currently recruiting, of how to best position that $20.5 million to work across all your rosters to have the best possible winning scenario on all your teams. That's a
Yeah.
huge market right now in
Yeah.
NIL because
Yeah.
that's, essentially a pay for play. And then
Yeah.
the rest of the money is made up by brands that do want to do true NIL, which is these smaller deals or like endorsement deals with the athletes. But honestly, less than 10% of every roster of every team actually wants to participate in NIL. Most athletes have no interest at all.
Yeah. So the transfer portal, you know, how long do you think until that disappears and it just becomes all the athletes have agents and it just becomes like the NFL?
You know, and I think that's a common discrepancy too. Like, not every athlete has an agent. Not every athlete has a publicist. Not every athlete has a marketing agent. Not every athlete, honestly, has an accountant or a wealth manager. It's only the top
Top
percentage of
ones.
the
Yeah.
team actually has all of those. On a team like the Chiefs, only like maybe less than 10 have a full stack team like that. The rest of
Hmm.
them are just kind of like hodgepodging all these other people together.
Yeah.
So, the majority of athletes in college right now do not have representation. And there's so many predatory agents out there in the NIL space. Um, it's commonly felt that agents are like more predatory than they are helpful as far as like the wider, amount of athletes is. Um, and so I don't think every athlete's necessarily going to get an agent, but every athlete needs to be smarter. Like, college sports
Yeah.
is a business, just like professional
Yeah.
sports is. And whether the rules change or not, whether the NCAA stays or it doesn't, athletes just need to treat themselves as a business. Everyone should have an LLC. Everyone should be reading over their contracts with their university, with whatever
Yeah.
brands they're working with. As the schools have these salary caps and they're giving them out to their rosters, they're going to start requiring that the athletes do things to get their salary, not just
Yeah.
like their scholarship and not just what they do on the field, but posting on behalf of,
Yeah.
one of the official sponsors that has naming rights deals, of doing things for the alumni group, of doing things for the team. Like, they're going to have those requirements. And so, it's a totally different ball game.
Yeah. So what advice can you give to the incoming college athlete coming out of high school who's coming into this world of craziness? What do you tell them?
I think it's totally different than it was when I was there. I can't
Yeah.
imagine what it would have been like if I was there. I would like to say that I would have thrived because I'm such a business minded, like PR person. I had a brand and an image when I was in college and I kept it very, very clean and tight knit. Um, but that's the thing, like, to be a college athlete nowadays is to be a business. And
Yeah.
as you go into college or you're in college, you need to treat it just like you're going out in the real world, of like, you
Yeah.
have a resume, you are constantly trying to build your brand and present your brand in a way that other people, whether that be your next school or whether that be your end employer or whether that be a brand that you want to have a brand deal with, they see it in a good light and you're always representing yourself
Yeah.
well and
Yeah.
successfully for that next thing. Because coaches leave, they leave in the middle of the night to go to their
No, yeah.
next school to get the next stepping stone in their career, to get a better and better job. And that's how athletes should be looking at it too. Unfortunately, with the rules and the way that this capitalism and NIL is going, like, the idea of being um, a true athlete who is very loyal to your school is really not there anymore. There are
No.
athletes that do it, but I think as soon as we started letting athletes do like a one and done, like, there is no
Yeah.
loyalty. And
No.
now it's about money versus
Yeah.
then it was about getting to league to then get money.
Yeah. Well, can you blame the kids?
No.
Probably not.
Like, how
Because
can
look
you,
at
like, would you blame a regular American for trying to make
no,
money in this
right.
society? No.
Look at Lane Kiffin, what he just did.
Yeah.
Now my opinion on that is it should have happened when the season ended.
Right. But
But also
many coaches want to get a jump on recruiting. Also, the school does
I
not
know.
care. So it's like you're a
But then the
rock in a hard
AD,
place. But
but he wanted to stay and coach, and the AD says no. But if the AD gets offered 3 million to go be the AD at LSU, do you think he might leave too?
yeah, again,
You
like
know?
all of this is about money.
Yeah, it's
And I
crazy.
think that's what's really hard.
Yeah,
Uh, and then, people forget that when there's money involved, like capitalism needs commodities. And
yeah,
so if you think about it that way, all these athletes are commodities. Like we
right.
know that, there's families that own all these professional teams, and the athletes are essentially commodities on the field. They're X's and
Yeah,
O's who have to be
yeah,
successful for the team to do well, to make more money, to sell merchandise and
yeah,
ticketing and sponsorships. That's what it is in college too. Like there
yeah.
is no loyalty to the athletes. It is
No,
a business, and you need
yeah,
to treat yourself like a business.
yeah. So, what can you tell these young athletes to watch out for or stay away from?
Mm. I would say stay away from predatory agents. Um, you know, the way that agencies work and agents work is that they take a percentage of something, of a business deal that's been done, whether that's your contract to go into the NFL, or whether it's a marketing deal that, let's say, Celsius is paying you $10,000 a month, they're going to take a percentage. You would be very careful of the people that you allow in your circle, because not everyone is for you. A lot of
Yeah,
people, especially in the system that we've made of NIL, is just about making money. So a lot of people are just to make money. So
yeah,
you need to be really, really careful. Like, do your research, ask around. And I think what's hard is a lot of parents have never touched this amount of money at one time or in their life, and
right.
don't have any experience with finding a contract agent, a marketing agent. They just go with what they find on the internet or what a
Yeah,
coach tells them. And coaches,
yeah,
again, can be driven by money. There are
yeah,
trainers who you're trained by, one trainer off season, but that coach, that trainer is being paid by another entity to hopefully recruit you to them for whether that be a financial advisor, an agent, a new school, whatever. And
yeah.
so there's a lot of, backdoor deals and things. And I think just educating yourself and trying to make the best decisions is all that you can do in this system.
Yeah. I think there's nothing wrong with multiple revenue shares
Mhm.
as long as they're done for the right reason.
Right.
And like you said, you're going to find some predatory people that are they're directing people to certain places for the money, even though it's not right for the athlete,
Hmm. Yep.
which is crazy. So let's talk about culture, right? Athletes' locker room culture is usually everything, right?
Hmm.
But how did you bring culture into your business? I mean, you've run multiple businesses, you hire people. What
Hmm.
do you look for? What is your culture like? What are you trying to build when you have the word culture in your company?
I think first off, I've had a lot of success. I have had success with student athletes or former student athletes. That is actually something that I do look for when I am hiring or bringing interns in or helping other colleagues, referring them people. Is I do look for a lot of student athletes. I think that, especially in this NIL world, like that's a whole system of business that you went through as a college student. And so I think that's a big part of it. But the main thing that I look for, actually, especially if you're an intern or an entry level, is, did you work in a business while you were in college, or did you at least do some level of student organizations and things like that? Because, like you mentioned, at the beginning of this podcast, like I wasn't just an athlete and a student. I had all these other things that I had done. I had learned time management skills of how to juggle. I had learned to play the politics of, these clubs and organizations, and learned to do professional writing and communication and things like that outside of the classroom and outside of my sport. And so those are the things that I look for when I hire people: is number one, are they entrepreneurial? Number two, ideally, were they a student athlete? And then number three, did they have, at least on the younger end, like some level of outside participation outside of school and outside of sport?
Right. Okay. So underneath the roof of your company, how do you promote morale and culture to keep everybody, as Fleck would say, rowing in the right direction?
Yeah. I think one of the big things that, as I grew in my company, and as a owner and a leader, a lot of it was mental health. I think that, I suffer with my own issues, and as everyone does. and just being very transparent with, my employees that like, hey, we have these days that you can use PTO, et cetera. And if it's for a mental health reason, like I'm not going to say anything. There's certain like, asterisks and drop
Yeah.
down menus that you have to fill out on your PTO form. But at the end of the day, like if you need time and it's going to, if not taking the time is going to reflect negatively on business, why wouldn't you want someone to take that time? And so,
Yeah.
um, in the broader sense of like business, you can't really talk about those things as much. But I think, with small businesses and entrepreneurship and startups, it's a little bit more of a candid conversation. And
Yeah.
so I've been very transparent with telling people, whether it be on podcasts or in interviews, like, hey, I'll share a little bit about my journey. Not that you have to, but that maybe it can make you feel more comfortable to be able to stand up for yourself when you need that mental health day, or even if you need a sick day or you need to go to a doctor's appointment. Like you're not going to get, penalized for having to go to a doctor's appointment and using your lunch for that. Or
Yeah.
even just taking a couple hours off to go to that doctor's appointment. I
Yeah.
think that's been a big thing. And a lot of that has been, again, because I got hospitalized for trying to overwork myself, for like what I went through in college and even, what I go through now. I have good days and bad days like anyone else.
Have you learned to slow down a little bit or no?
To an extent, I spend time with family. I have two nieces out here in LA, and my partner. And so I spend a lot of time doing that. I'm big on finding good places to eat. But entrepreneurship is not a 9 to 5, it's a 24
No.
7. And so, everything I do does kind of lead back to how can this help in business, or how does this help someone else in their business or their
Yeah.
life? That's a big part of like what and it goes on in the back of my mind when I do
Yeah.
things now.
So who's been the biggest influence for you in your life? I mean, you've had to come across so many different people over the last number of years. Like who's been the influence for you?
You know, it's changed like over the years. I think, my family was a big influence. My grandmother on my mother's side, she was very proper and always had a great brand. And so that was something that I learned early on. My mom was an entrepreneur. She had, 9 to 5 work, but at some point she had entrepreneurship. And so I learned a lot there. As I got older, like my leaders in my internships, I had one leader, Liz Suter from Team USA, US Rowing. She was a huge influence. Like the way that she handled the politics and the way that she navigated things was amazing. And then, my internship at Main Events Boxing, my boss at the time, Joe Rotunda, he taught me so much. And then Adrian Clark and Jolene and Kathy Duva and, Lisa Meyer, they all taught me something. Fast forward, I worked at the Mets. My boss, Kyle Ingram, has always been one of the biggest influences on my life. He was just so giving, like as a boss, and you could honestly speak to him about anything. I think he was just such an amazing person with personnel and hiring. He always assembled the best teams, and like I still regard him today as like one of my favorite people I've ever worked for. I still keep him in touch with everything, and honestly, he hired me at the Mets, and I met my fiance there. So like he's been such a big influence.
Can't
Um,
argue with that one.
yeah, right.
Right?
And I think fast forward, like now I look at it a little bit differently. It's not just the people I've worked for, but it's the people that you aspire to be or to do some of the things they've done.
Yeah.
Most notably, I would say Emma Grady is like a big influence in at least listening to her thought process and how she
Hmm.
approaches different things. She launched Good American, Skims. She and her husband like have a great pedigree of business and have a great portfolio. And now that I'm getting more into the investing space and the family office space, it's definitely someone that I listen to quite often.
Cool. So who are you influencing?
Um, every intern I've had, I always try really, really hard to help them with their like honestly next interview. I try really hard to help them get a job. We're always going over their resumes. I make them go through a program I made where they actually have to go and network with everyone that I know that I believe could be an influence in their life. Um, I have so many programs like Rutgers, that have mentee programs that I'm currently a part of that I get mentees out of every single
Yep.
semester. I've got another one in Asians in advertising. Um, And when I go to events, like the first thing I do, and this is very un-LA of me, is not like, what do you do? Who do you know? But it's like, oh, what good restaurants have you gone to? Because I've got an Apple Notes list of like every good restaurant in LA that
All
I
right.
like. And like if you could see the collaboration list on like who I've sent it to, it's so long and there's so many like notable people on there because
Yep.
my first thought is not like, what can you do for me? It's like, have you been to Thai show? Because I love Thai show.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're a foodie.
I wouldn't say I'm a foodie. I don't think I have those qualifications, but I do have a very strong belief in I'm not spending my hard earned money on something I don't like.
Okay. That's good. So where are you now and where are you going? What's next for you?
Yeah. You know, I've got a big footprint in NIL and I'm going to continue to help as much as I can in the space. A lot of it is through like education and consulting at universities, of athletic departments, of individual staff, of agents, of agencies, of third parties. And so that's definitely something I'm going to continue doing. I'm doing a lot of fractional COO and CMO role work right now. Um, and I'm starting to get into the family office side because I've realized, in this world, um, money is the answer to a lot of things, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And when it comes to making big changes, capital is a huge, huge part of that. And so,
Yeah.
if my purpose has always been to help and to grow and to build, like you said, I've come to realize that that next space that I need to be in is investor space. So, like I said, I'm starting to advise a few companies that I think are going to do well. Helping to advise other startups that are looking to get investors, helping them get their data rooms ready and things like that. And then also working with larger family offices in setting up their digital infrastructures and meeting the right talent to
Yeah.
help them with certain investments or put them on the cap table and things like that.
Yeah. So how are you finding these family offices, or is it just are they finding you?
Both. Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of search just of word of mouth.
Okay.
I'm big on referrals. Like I only ever work with people I know or someone I've worked with or respect has referred to me. And
Okay.
then the other way around, some of these offices are finding me, or I find myself in an MBA foundation event and like I'm talking to the head of a family office and we've got a meeting the next week. So all networking,
And that takes a lot of what?
time,
Time and
energy.
courage. Courage,
Ah, okay.
right?
See, and that's the thing. I think, people have said like so many times, like courage and um, audacity and confidence and all these things. And like those just aren't things that I have to think about, which I think
yeah,
I've genuinely been so lucky that I
yeah,
just go out and do it. If I think like it needs to be
yeah,
done, I'm going to go get it done. And I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit,
yeah. You'd be
as an
surprised.
entrepreneur.
The word courage, sometimes is a dirty word. You
Yeah.
know, the I don't want to say the average person. I don't like to say that, but let's just use that for an example. The
Mhm.
average person doesn't have a lot of it,
Yeah.
and
They're just willing
outside
to
the
sit
comfort
behind their
zone.
desk and do their 9 to 5. They're
Yeah,
willing to, work to make the rest of the life that they want. I
yeah,
think for me, I want the work that I do to shape the world that I want to be a part of.
yeah. Well, that leads into my next question, right? Is you're still very young,
I know. I
you
actually
know.
just had my 30th birthday a
Happy
couple days
birthday.
ago. Thank you.
All right. And when's your birthday?
November 26th.
All right. Happy birthday. 30, right? You got so much time in front of you,
I know.
right? But there's going to come a day when somebody is going to say, "Hey, you remember Rachel?" When that day comes, like, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? How do you want to be remembered when they hear your name?
I think, like I said, I had a grandmother who's passed, but she was big on like personal brand, whether she called it that or not. She was very proper. Um, and so even when I was in high school and like everything you'll find on the internet about me, the podcasts I do, the interviews I give, what I post, it's very on brand with this personal brand that I've crafted. And to me, that's been really important because I do want to leave a legacy and I want people to remember me for certain things. And I think it's been pretty consistent. And that legacy is that I'm a hard worker, that I care, um, and then I just want to do the right thing. I think that's just to me like always been such a guiding principle of, I struggled with jobs that I felt were not doing the right thing or helping people in the way that I thought I should be. And like the physical embodiment was like I was sick all the time, like I said. And so I think for me, It's really just about helping people, about, like I said, making the world that I want to live in, or that I think what the world should be.
That'd be a great way to be remembered. I think that
Hopefully.
I think they're already remembering you that way.
I've got a lot of time to still craft that. So,
Oh yeah, I'm sure you do. So, Rachel, we covered a lot of stuff,
mhm.
and we talked about, college, coming out of high school, going to college, dealing with college, coming out of college, your work life, where you at, where you going, what's going on. Is there anything we haven't touched on you think we should hit before we wrap it up?
um, I think like one thing that I'm big on again is like giving back. I volunteer. When I was a student athlete, I think my senior year I had like 300 hours of community service. I think my team won like the most community service at that year.
A lot of
Um,
hours.
yeah, I know. Ronald McDonald House. Thank you. Um, but that leads me to the point that I have office hours every single week for students, for young adults, for professionals far along in their career, anyone that really just wants to, talk through something, or wants to meet me, or like there might be a connection that I have that I have absolutely no problem, after a good conversation, referring them to, because I'm a big believer in, good things come back to you. And so I love meeting new people, even though I'm an introvert. Like I would like this interview is in my house because I don't like to leave my house. Like I'm an introvert, truly. But I do
I
like
find
meeting
that
new.
hard to believe, but
I
that's
know
okay.
that's what everyone says. No, I'm an introvert. Like once I'm done with this, I would stay home, but now I have to go to Snapchat and go to a Christmas party, and it's like, ugh, conversations. Um, but back to the point that like I have those office hours because I'm again a big believer in, if there's any way I can help, I want to be able to help. I want to be of service. And so anyone that wants to come into those office hours to talk about, how to get an NIL deal, how to reach out to brands, or how to become an agent, or how to start a business, what needs to be in their data room when they're looking for investments, or the nuances of mental health and being a college athlete, or the nuances of being, a young entrepreneur, or a woman of color, or a young person in a room who may be feeling imposter syndrome. I'm always happy to help and always happy to be of service.
Well, how can they get a hold of you?
So my social media is all Rachel Maeng, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. My email is rachelmaeng@genagency.co. And those are the best ways to reach me. There's a Calendly link on all of those, and my office hours are there. My meeting links are there. Anything that you need.
Great. Well, listen, once this goes live, you better be careful.
Yeah, I every time they do go live, I have about 20 meetings that then are
That's
set
good.
up, which I have to like spread over the course. But like I mean it when I say it. Like I plan to and will get to every single one of those meetings and try to be helpful if I can.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, Rachel, listen, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate everything you're doing, the impact you're making, and I just can't wait to see all the things you're going to do still, let alone what
Same.
you've
I'm
already
still trying to
done.
figure those things out.
Yeah, but I'm sure you're going to do some amazing things. Keep up the good work, and if there's anything I can do to help you, always, you got a friend over here on the East
Thank
Coast.
you. Yeah, I know. West Coast life.
West Coast. Hey, listen, it's nice over there. It's nice and warm.
Yeah, it's nice to never have to look at like what the weather is. And I can't say that many people own an umbrella here.
All right. Well, as I always say when I end the show, stay strong.
Thank you.